Okay, so we can start now. So hello everyone, and I'm very happy that you make it for this hour to come here. So the topic of the presentation is believable creature design based on the biology of real animal. And at first I want to show you a short summary what we will be talking about today. So first I will tell you about myself, why am I even talking about it. Second, we will go through the most important for me creature design rules. And then I will show you the example of use in my case, because I did a master's degree based on it. And at the end, I will show you the summary of all of it. Okay. So my name is Marta Słupska, and I'm working at Anshar studio in Katowice for 4 years now. I'm doing there everything as a 2D artist. It is 2D assets, UIs, or 2D animations, but I'm not doing anything about creature design yet. So why am I talking about this today? I have always loved drawing when I was a little kid, and I always loved animals, and drawing animals was like the best possible thing for me to do, and I can do it all day. My mother is a biology teacher, and she taught me everything I know. So I was happily drawing animals, but then I go to do the studies at Salesian University, and the name of my studies was Virtual Space and Game Design. And to be honest, I was totally overwhelmed with what I met there, because there were so many talented people who were drawing all the different stuff, and I was trying to do the same, and it totally crushed me because I actually stopped drawing. And until I do my master's degree, when I decided that, and realized that I can actually pick every topic I can possibly think about, and I decided to go back to my favorite topic, which are animals, and this creature design. So I studied animals, and I also studied creature design books and animal books. So there are 3 of my favorites, and I can totally recommend all of them, but for me, the Bible are the three ones at the top. They are terribly love as a creature design series, and it's totally the best for me. And I also love all the natural history books and about painting, but I also love the books about this little one there is about art. But I was still stuck with what the technique I could use, because I was so familiar with pencil drawing that was the favorite thing for me. And even when I was working in Anshar developing my digital skills, it wasn't the most natural thing for me. But my superior teacher with my master's degree says, but you're drawing well with your pencil, so why wouldn't you do that? And I was totally skeptical about it, because everything in industry do the digital painting. And I was very shocked when I realized that all my favorite creature artists are actually drawing with the pencil. So the first one is Stephen Oakley, and he's drawing, for example, for God of War and for the Evolve area, and it's totally my favorite one. And the second one is Terry Whitledge, which her books you've seen before, and it's just amazing. And she's drawing only with pencil or with paint, and she's working for Star Wars movies or for Disney. And there is a Ken Bartholomew, which is working with the movies, and Bobby Reynolds, which is also a very known concept artist. And they are all drawing with pencils, and I decided I will do the same. And I will show you the effect of this work at the 4th part of the presentation. Now we will go for the rules. So what is the creature anyway? So in Latin, creatura means the thing created. So it means that all things that are biological entities are the creatura. But for the entertainment industry, it's usually the animal that is in the movie or in the scientific story, or maybe in fantasy or mythology story. So what's the creature design? The creature design is making these animals. So it's a concept art field responsible for designing imaginary life, the way that audience will believe that it could exist with the actors or with the people in the story. So we can divide a creature design into groups, and the first one are chimeras, which are when you take the part of one animal and mix it with another one, but you are not changing it at all. So, for example, there are mermaids who are half human and half fish. Centaurs half human and half horse, and griffins half lion and half eagle. And the second one is discrete creature. There are examples. Discrete creatures, and it means that the creature is one as a whole. So it have its unique DNA, and it's not a mix of other animals, but have its own very characteristic features. And every real animal is an example. For example, there are porks from Star Wars, and another example is cat from Pacific Rim. So for me, and from Terry Whitloff in her Science of Creature Design book, the most important rule of creature design is the why of the creature. And it means that why the creature looks the way it does is exactly what it needs to do. And that means that its design, its anatomy, make some abilities that are very necessary for it to survive in the world it existing possible. And that means that nothing in the animal is random, everything is because of the reason. And I think it's very important. Because of the features the creature have, especially in creature design when you're designing, is that it can fulfill its role in its personal story. So it shows the story of the creature itself in the story you are telling, like the film or the game. It's not a story, so it shows how the species was developing through the ages from the evolutionary point of view. And the overriding story archetype, which is the story of this archetype of your story. So it depends if, for example, if the creature is the good one, you will design it the other way if it's the bad or the enemy creature. So basically design and story go hand in hand. The story drives the design, and it also goes the other way. The design drives the story. So with the design you can do the storytelling of your book as well as with the works. Now I will show you the example I think is bad because it didn't take this rule very seriously. And this example is No Man's Sky, and I don't think this design is bad. Maybe it is, but I think that the overall thinking was bad. That in the creature design, things cannot be random or cannot be generated. There have to be decisions that are very well thought because there are reasons that creature looks the way they do. For the other hand, I have a good example of using this method, and this is the Monster Hunter world. When creatures are created with very, very big thoughts and big focus on anatomy and how they look like, it depends on what they are, what are their mechanics, and I think is the best thing. But there also is very well created world with all the dependencies that animals can have, and I think is very amazing, because in the game some creatures will not show up in the area that other creatures that are danger for them will show up. So it's totally living and very full of relationship words, and I think it's very good. So seeing this, that another very important thing in creature design is designing the world. So you have to know your words that you can suit your creatures to. And you can take the word we have here because we know it and it's very familiar for anybody. But then you have to assume that all the people will think that something have to work with the rules of our word. But you can also take our word and add something to it. For example, magic, like in Harry Potter, and twist it a little bit and make. But you have to remember that the rules you were set will be verified for your audience. But you can also figure out your own word, and there are a few factors you can take to make it more believable. And first factor are physical factors. And for example, this is the weather, this is where the planet is in the context of the stars, what's the temperature or what's the terrain it looks like in it. And all these factors will affect the looks of your creature. Second aspect is biological life, and they are all the relationship between all the biological life on your planet. So you can decide what's the source of energy in your food chain, and I think it's also very important. And the third part, that you don't have to put in your in your world, but it makes it very interesting and make lots of stories possible, is to make one or two species, or maybe more species, dominate. So it makes all other animals depending on itself or have different relationships. For example, it can, like we do humans, so we appreciate some creatures because they are useful for us, and we hate others because they are bad for us. And without us, there be totally different kind of relationships. So, what do we need biology for in creature design? So, we actually need it. So we can put something in the mind of our viewers that is familiar for them, so they will easily think about what you are saying. And putting in the viewer mind something without explanation with using words is the key objective. The French painter Eugène Delacroix said nature is a dictionary, one draws words for it. And I think it's exactly what the nature is for the creature artist. You see the things in nature, how they work or how they look like, and you take them to make your own story, or you make your design as the words for your story. Okay, so now we will switch to very specific biology sciences, and the first one is taxonomy. Taxonomy is the science that divides animals into smaller groups depending on how they look like or how they are built. So we will do the taxonomy for this marmoset. This is a little marmoset here. And the first group is the kingdom. And in very simplification, kingdom is if it's animal or if it's plant or if it's bacteria, but this is simplification, there are much more of it. So in this case, this is of course animal. The second one is phylum, and it's again simplification, but it divides animals into vertebrate and invertebrates. So vertebrates are the ones that have backbone or the spine, and the other one are those who don't have it. You can use it in creature design, saying that your creature have a backbone. It makes you have a lot of rules you can use when you're designing. And when you are designing something without the spine in vertebrates, there are much more loosened rules for this. So you can decide which one you try to do. Another group is a class. So the most popular class in vertebrates are mammals, birds, fish, amphibians, and reptiles, and you probably heard of it in school. And for invertebrates are crustaceans, insects, and arachnids. And for this marmoset is of course mammals. Another group is order. For this one is the primates, and it's another smaller group depending on specific features. Another one is family, and for this marmoset is Cebidae, and it means that there are marmosets, squirrel, monkeys, and familiar and relatives. And another one is genus, and for this is Calatrix, and of course at the end there's a species, and it means that is common marmoset. On another slide, I want to show you how big the family is and how you can. It's like, for me, it's like you take one model of the monkey, switch its textures, and add something, and you have so many different species, and it's amazing how wonderful the world is, but it's also amazing how you can make different kind of animals that are related. And I think it's another very nice feature for your world, that there are few animals that have similar features, but there are different species. Sorry. Okay, so another very important one is of course anatomy, but this is a very vast topic, and you can actually learn anatomy all your life and you will still be surprised with something you can find out. And it's very important to learn very basics, like what are the most important part of the skeleton, on how muscles wrap around the bones. And you can try to do your best, depending on references, to make the anatomy of your creature reliable and how and anatomy helps to figure out how your creature looks in different poses, so it's believable. The little bit of easy part is that different creatures have the same sets of bones, but with the different proportions or different relationships, but it's a little bit of simplifications for you when designing, so you have to learn the basics, and then you can just switch them or differ them for your creature. And anatomy is a kind of sanity check for our imagination. So when you're creating, you're not crazy with your ideas, but when you have to make it work, you will go back to the rules, and you have to make it very believable with the rules of anatomy. And this is the quote of my career, which is also one of my favorite creature concept artists. The fix is a bit easier for invertebrates because they have exoskeleton, and sometimes you can design things that are not very useful, but they are useful for this creature, but it have more possibilities to design. Okay, so now we will switch to the appearance. So what's in the outside of your creature? And I want to show you something that is very curious for me, that some examples of animal textures are in many creatures the same. In this example, they are all prey animals, and they have the same feature, which is the white belly. So it makes them neutralize the shadow, so they are not seen as something you can hand on. There are an example. It's very similar, but for the different kinds of animals, and there are carnivore carnivore fish. And in this example, shark and the marlin has a white belly, not to be seen as the shaded one, but when you see at it from down low, you cannot see it because it's the same color as the sky. And when you see it from the upstairs, it's dark, and it have the same color that the background under it. Another texture is that big animals, when they are very big and have no real danger, expect humans probably, are usually gray or dumb in the color. So because they don't need to hide, or they don't need to have very specific colors, and this color helps them to manage their body temperature. And the last one that is very interesting for me is the trait of the black stripe with the eye, and it's very common among all the kinds of animals. So why wouldn't you use it for your animals? It's very strange because it's the dark line in the eye and two brighter one on the up and down it, and we don't know why is it like this, but it's probably because the eyes are the most seen feature. When you look at the creature, you look at its eyes immediately. So it's the way to hide it in the grass or with the shades. Now another kind of appearance tricks is mimicry, and it means that the animal tries to look more dangerous than it is. And in this picture, we have a Texas coral snake, and it's very dangerous and very poisonous. And the second one is Mexican milky snake, and it's totally not harmful, but it looks almost exactly like the first one. Another example is this little larva that's trying to look like a snake, very dangerous snake. And the second one is the pygmy owl, and we are actually looking at it back. So it looks like it has its eye behind it, so nobody approach it from behind because they are scared it will see them. Different kind of hiding or trying to not be eaten is camouflage. And I think it could, at the first glance, look like the most interesting post of this presentation. In the first one, you can see the flounder. It's the flatfish lying on the sand and looking exactly like this. It can change color a little bit, so it's totally invisible. In the green one, I'm not sure if you see it on the screen. There's a butterfly that looks exactly like a leaf. On the middle one, there's a bird trying to be a branch. And on the last one, there's a mantis looking exactly like a leaf, having even the lines like a leaf have. Another interesting feature you can use in your creature design is sexual dimorphism. And it means that the individuals that are female are different than individuals that are male. And in the animal world, and especially with mammals and birds, it usually looks the way that the male is much more colorful or much more big and more representative than the female. And on the first, you of course see lion with its mane. On the second one, there are birds of paradise that are very colorful, but their females are totally looking like a sparrow or something very small and not very interesting. And on the third one, you see the deer with its antlers that it also used to fight for its females. Okay. And except of appearance, you can also design the behavior of your animal, and it makes it even more interesting and more full of life. And you can ask yourself some questions about it. For example, does it live alone and in a group? It also has a big influence on how the animal looks like, because when it lives in a group, it's trying to be the same with all of them, so it is not so distinguished for the predators. You can ask yourself if it does take care of its offspring or not, because it's usually big animals have less offspring, and small animals have more offspring, so it's more possible for them to get alive. And also fishes or amphibians have a lot of offspring, but they don't care of it at all. Another question is how does it fit, and when it stands on the food chain, and how does it spend winter? There are much more questions you can find in the biological science, that it's named ethology, and it depends on the behaviors of the animals. And the last thing I want to talk about are species relationships, because there are some relationships that also make world more interesting, because there are dependencies between the species you're designing. And for example, the first one is predation, and it's of course when one species hunting for the other one. And the very nice feature I want to talk about is that animals that are hunting are usually having their eyes on the front, but the animals that they hunted for have their animals on the back. So the predators can see their prey very specifically in one point, but the prey wants to see all around, so the predator cannot approach it easily. Another one is a competition, and it's of course when one species competes with the other for some resources, for example food or habitats. Another one is a parasitism, and it's when one animal takes something from the other, destroying it but not killing it, and it's not very good for the host. Another one is a commensalism, and it's when one species take an advantage from another, but the another one don't really care, and it's okay for it. And the last one is mutualism, and it's when both species take advantage from the relationship, and they have benefits from it. And for example, this is the bee taking the pollen from the flower, and flower have so flower likes it that it takes the pollen, but the bee takes the nectar. Okay, so there's also, I have some little tips in the biology I like myself, so I think it's nice to give your creatures some characteristic feature. So your creatures. And I noticed that there are some animals that have very hard to see features, that when you see this is animal with the very big ears and the trunk, and you immediately know that I'm talking about an elephant. And another little tips is to make exceptions, because every exception makes the rule more possible, and in the real world there are a lot of exceptions from the rules. For example, mammals are usually giving birth to their offspring after the pregnancy, but kangaroo is the exception and give birth for a very little animal and have it in its pouch. And the second example are the mudfish, and because fish usually don't breathe with the atmospheric air, but this one, the one that I'm trying. Okay, so this is the short summary for all the rules I was talking about, and this is why of the creature. The second one is to remember about your word. The third one is to use a taxonomy, so you can decide in which part of the taxonomy your animal is. The third one is, of course, anatomy, and you have to always remember about it. Fifth one are appearance, and there are some common traits, mimicry and camouflage, sexual dimorphism. And sixth one is behavior and relationships. Okay, now I will show you how I use the examples in my master's degree artistic part. So first, I will, of course, have to figure out the world I want my creatures to exist in. So I was thinking about the world that is under the ground, in the caves, but I imagine that the caves are in very vast spaces. So all the life can live between them, like there are all the savannas and all the grass in here. But I have one big problem. I was sketching it very cheerfully, how would it look like, and I thought that the temperature on the surface is very high, and that's why all the creatures are under the surface. But I have a really big problem with the source of the energy, because in our world, the source of energy are plants that are taking energy from sun and turn it into biological matter. And in this example, the sun could be not enough for the plants because it's far away, and bouncing light is not enough even if it makes the spaces bright. But I fortunately came into the post on Facebook about theoretical biology, and it says that it is possible for organisms to take energy from other kinds than photosynthesis from the sun. And one of the examples was thermosynthesis. That means that you can take energy from the differences between temperatures. So if you have very low temperatures and it makes the air distant, so it's not so big. And when the temperatures is higher, it grows and it can make an energy. So I designed some plants that can depend on the difference between the temperature on the surface and the temperature under the surface. So they have the big, very long organs that take the temperature out of the surface and make it for the temperature inside the surface. And I did some sketches about how it could work. Then I started to design my animals, and I thought it would be nice to make an animal who take the plants exactly from the walls, so it have flat mouth. And my favorite kind of starting to work is to work with the head first, because with the head you can the best catch the character of your creature. And what the ritual said, eyes are very important because our eyes are the window of the soul, but they are also very helpful face landmark, and I totally rely on this. So when I designed the head, the one on the right is the one I decided to move on with. I tried to design the body type and doing some thumbnails. And when I have it, I did the drawing of the animal itself. This is the scanned drawing. Then I clear it a little bit, make it more up, give basic color to it, add some local colors, and even more local colors, some highlights, and this is the final thing. I like to design creatures from the side so I can see all the features I want to have in this creature. I also add this the characteristic feature. I was talking about it before, so I thought it would be nice if it have some. And for this creature, I gave the big red pouch, which is based on, and this is the species name, magnificent Frigata bird. That also have this feature. It makes it red and pop out to fight for the females. And at the last part of my process, I did the behavioral sketches. So this is how they can look if they are eating with their stock. And on the second picture, you can see how they fight to see who's the dominant one. Okay, so another species I was thinking was the, again, mammal who who's herbivore. And I thought that would be a nice feature if you have very long mouth, so it can put it in the little cracks inside the rocks and take all the little plants from it. And I did the sketches, and I decided that two last ones are very nice, and I tried to make two animals that are in the same family. So the first one is, I name it horse, and it looks like this. I also add some characteristic features like the beak from his hair and the stripe on its eyes. And I also add some behavioral drawings, and this is how they fight, and this is totally like the horses do. And how they look with this little one that he has his horn not standing yet, and they look the same in the stock, so they are not so distinguished from each other. And the second species was the one I called moose, and this is the male character, because I did the sexual dimorphism here, and the first one is male, the second one is female, and the third one is the baby. And of course I did some behavioral drawings, and the first one is why they're fighting, and the second one that they take care of the animals. And now it was time for something that could eat it all. So I decided to make a predator that is the feline kind, so it looks like cat. And I felt it would be a nice idea that it can jump from the rocks on cheerful and nothing expecting horses and mooses, and can fly with its skin between his arm and his belly to fly a little bit like those mouses with this do. And it have very strong and long tail to navigate when flying, and it also have a catchable back legs, so it can fall on it like an owl, so it will hit it and fall it and make it fall. And I also drew how I imagine how it hangs. So this is the cat falling on the horse. And I also did some behavioral drawing. I think it's very nice to design a little ones because they are cute. And I also add this feature, and I think it would be nice to communicate with each other. And I also did the exception from all the species. So all the species are living under the surface, but this is one that live outside of the surface. This is a huge tortoise that can, because all the reptiles can change, but they have their temperature possible to be changed. And I think it's a good feature for it to live outside of on the surface. And it have it baldachin, so it hides from the very sharp sunlight. And I also designed its head, so it have the horns that are hiding its eyes from the sun, and have very long tongue because of the way it fits. And that's the way that he fits when he comes to the cracks when all these animals live, and lick everything he finds with his tongue and don't really care if he destroys someone's life or not. And he goes away for another one. And on its surface, I thought that would be nice to give something that can live on it. And this is the little flying cat. And it have its tail looking the way it can suck to the surface, so it won't fall, because if it fall, it cannot live without his tortoise. And they have also the skin between their arms and legs, so because they are the mammals, so their temperature is not changed, and they have to have ways to be cold. So, for example, they have this skin, which is very well blooded and help to exchange the temperature with the atmosphere. And they live in the little houses they made from the skin and from the mud they found on the tortoise. And they are also cute. Okay, so there are all the species I designed. This is the quick summary of what we talked about today and the most important rules. So you have to remember about why of the creature. So the creature looks exactly the way it needs to look in the real life, and you have to also do it in your world. The second one is to remember about story's word. That creature never lives in the vacuum, and everything in the world have the impact on how it looks. And the third one is to use nature as your dictionary. You can simply use it as a references, but it's very important both for appearance and for behavior. Okay. Thank you. So we have a lot of time for questions. Do you have any? Okay. So thank you. Oh yes, good night. Dobra.
You have animal drawing today, and I was curious, do you do your personal explorations after projects, or do you just draw for a daily project, or do you make personal explorations just to make this, you call it dictionary and library?
So I'm doing animal creature there for depending my dictionary, of course, because when I'm studying animals, I'm learning a lot, even if I thought I knew it. And I'm trying to do my own projects that are more like creature design things, but I'm not showing it on Instagram yet. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, so thank you very much for coming, and see you again on the